Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our 5e Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign recap. There's so much background to go into. We're just going to jump right in. When we last left our party, they were in the grotto here under Queen's Park Garden, and they were involved in a very difficult fight against the corrupted Queen Lenore and her handmaidens, which had been turned into these weird sort of corrupted dryads. And the party had taken some damage. The druid over here had taken some hits. Queen Lenore shoots out all of this radiant energy out of her eyes. But when he got turned back into a regular gnome by how much damage he had taken, he decided to cast Fog Cloud over here and kind of obscure their line of sight and try to see if he could turn this combat around. Now, what's interesting, he had already been damaged by her eye beams, basically, and when you fail that saving throw, not only do you take full damage, but you also get a level of contamination. And in the Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign, when you take a level of contamination, you also have to roll to see if you get a mutation. So he had 2 levels of contamination, and on the second one, he rolled and he got a mutation. We have this card here for his first mutation, Arcane Blood, which actually gives you an extra spell slot at your highest level. So the thing about these cards and these mutations is some of them are actually helpful and some of them are very much not so. So he gets 2 levels of contamination, and then he turns around and gets an actual benefit where he gets an extra high level spell slot. So I wasn't totally thrilled about that as the DM, but it is what it is. So something else interesting happened between adventures. A friend of mine named Matt was here visiting Nashville from Indiana. He's on our sister YouTube channel, 11 Foot Pole. You can go check that out. He's part of our 5e Dark Sun campaign. But he had come down to visit, and he was available the night we were gaming, and so I decided to let him jump in as an NPC, which turned out to be really helpful to these guys, because I decided I'd been doing something with the rival NPC party, right? You're supposed to set up, or it's optional to set up in the Dungeons of Drakkenheim, that you have this opposite party that's a little bit ahead of your main group as far as levels and achievement go, and you try to set up this rivalry. And because they're supposed to be the rival party, I call them the Unrivaled Four. And I got stats from them. There's a product on the DM's Guild called Minsk and Booze, something of villainy, Journal of Villainy or whatever, and I pulled off some stats for these 4, and I'm using the art obviously from the Darkest Dungeon for these guys. So I decided to let Matt, as a guest player, play the stats for Lothar. Lothar, yeah. Lothar is basically a barbarian with a couple levels of warlock of the Raven Queen, and he's quite a bit ahead level-wise of where the party is. So I dug out this mini, to use in a pinch. Seems kind of Dark Souls-ish to me, the way this guy looks, and he has an axe, which is Lothar's main weapon, and I let him be showing up, and I totally rubbed it into the players. I was like, oh yeah, he decided to drop by the garden by himself after the rest of the party. They defeated a clutch of demonic mind flayers, and he thought he'd swing by the garden and pick up a few more eldritch lilies for one of his teammates' experimentation. And, he fought his way through the red caps, killed them all with a single swipe of his mighty axe. And then he found the trolls from last time, and he carved right through them. And then he heard the sound of a fireball go off, and he decided to come down here. He heard these guys screaming like 13-year-old girls that had seen a rat when they were trying to fight her. So he gets dumped into the initiative order, and he shows up here to help the party. So it turned out they were going to need it. So she comes out of the fog cloud on her turn, and so does this one. Peter gets a couple of kung fu punches on this one, but of course he's averting his eyes, so everything's with disadvantage. And then the fight starts back up. I believe Thaddeus might have turned back into a bear here pretty early, used his last wild shape for the day, and the fog cloud gets dropped, and the party's in, and they're slinging around what spells they have left. A couple of these girls come in, and eventually Peter gets up here. He's using one of his last key points, and he manages to stun the queen, and and so she can't do anything. Her gaze attack is still going, but this whole monk's stunning strike thing, she doesn't have legendary resistance or anything cool like that. So once they had her stunned, they pretty much were gonna win this fight. The dryads, and she was able to use her snake hair to attack Thaddeus again, and he got another level of contamination. So now he's up to 3 levels of contamination. He does not get any healing from a long rest. He only gets half healing when he spends hit dice. But he drew another mutation card and got another cool mutation that basically lets him use Phantom Step, or what is Misty Step, like 1 time per day, equal to, for each level of contamination he has. So he's got 3 levels of contamination, and both of his mutations are in his favor. But anyway, they managed to finally get in here and finish off Lenore with the help of Lothar, and they were mopping up. He went ahead and used Nexel went ahead and used his last fireball to get a few of these, hurt her, and took out a couple of them, and then after Lenore dropped, they managed to get this girl down to 1 hit point, and they decided to take her prisoner. So they managed, with their eyes closed, to kind of tackle her and cover her eyes so that she couldn't see anyone. With his black belt, they wrapped his black belt around her eyes, and so she's still in the fantasy that this is some sort of fairy tale storybook world where the queen, she's like, "You cads, you bashers, you mashers, you brutes, you have no honor," and she's still in this world where it's all knights and beautiful ladies. But Pietro made a pretty good persuasion roll, and she basically revealed that yes, the hooded lanterns that they're looking for were kind of down this way, and so I think Pietro and maybe Lothar and her went down there. Maybe Nexel was with them. And these guys were searching around here. So Atticus, the artificer, decides to cast Detect Magic. Just out of nowhere, he spends 10 minutes casting Detect Magic as a ritual. Well, the queen has a ring of protection on that has the royal seal, like her signet ring is a ring of protection. So they never would have found that if it wasn't for that, him casting that spell. But now they have a ring of protection. They didn't tell me who's going to attune to it. And also the artwork you saw in the thumbnail last time, she has this priceless ruby necklace that she wore all the time that was like part of the crown jewels. And so now the party has that, and it's literally worth a king's ransom. So anyway, they get down here and they find the remaining hooded lantern rangers that they had been looking for this whole time. Their main reason for being here was to figure out what the big threat was, kind of finish off the big boss of the area, and then rescue all these hooded rangers. So they had achieved both. They let this girl go. After she promised to help them and tell them where the rangers were if they promised to let her go. So they let her go, and she escaped. She was the only one who lived. And then the party, after looting and getting everything they could from this place, they've got to gather up all of these knights and try to get them out of the garden. So that means it basically becomes everybody's favorite kind of mission, an escort mission. They've got to try to get these guys out of the deep haze and hopefully back to the Drakkenheim city garrison. And of course they're like, well, can't these guys, oh no, they can't they help us out? No, they've all got 2 levels of exhaustion and 3 levels of contamination, and they've got disadvantage on everything, and no, you have to just limp them along. They won't go quite as fast as you guys go, you know, like in any video game escort mission, they just kind of wander really slowly and you're trying to protect them. I'm like, good DMing quality right here. So the party has to find their way back out of Queen's Park Garden through the deep haze. So again, we play this mini game where you roll and you can use survival or perception or, you know, artisans tools. I don't remember all the rolls you can use, but there's several different, a nature roll you can use to try to safely navigate your way out of here. And you count the successes that you need like 5 successes to find your way to where you're trying to get, but you also count the failures. So now they've got an extra player with them, right? So there's 5 of them and they're all rolling. They roll enough successes that they're gonna basically be halfway out. I determined, but they also rolled enough failures that they come across a random encounter. So I had Matt, our guest, roll on the random table, and it's the garden gnome encounter that actually had been the inspiration for me to create the red cap encounter in the first place. So I basically decided the red caps were seeking revenge for their fallen brethren who had been killed by old Lothar on his way in. So I gave everybody a chance to roll perception because they're waiting in ambush. Only a couple of people made that perception roll, and so the fight was on. These little guys get 3 attacks with their scythes, or if they can move before attacking, they can clobber you with their iron boots and knock you prone and do like 3d10 damage. It was a significant amount of damage. So these guys immediately come in. They're trying to finish off Lothar. They're and everybody else is attacking one of the party members. I think this guy came from over here because at some point they're back here. And Nexel decides to Misty Step, way over here. So now, all of a sudden, Atticus is basically facing off against 3 of them at once. The monk uses a key point to do Flurry of Blows, so now he can disengage. He runs all over the place. He's trying to be silly. He's running between everybody because, he gets a ton of movement when he does that. And then Nexel is over here long distancing spells, and Thaddeus is trying to tank one, and Lothar's tanking one, and he's fighting 3. So Lothar decides he can take an attack of opportunity if it'll get him over here to help with these. But as they started to get low on hit points, they didn't really have as much of a grudge against him as they did against Lothar, and I think Pietor had dropped one of them too. So it was like, Pietor took this one out. So now they're trying to get Pietor, and they definitely want to get Lothar. Well, they weren't going to get Lothar. He had triple-digit hit points to start the encounter out. So these guys are ordered to kind of spread out and get out of the way because Atticus wants to unleash his thunder wave. He wants to thunderstruck these guys, which he did. I think he knocked a couple of them back, and they took some damage. But Pietor once again tries to get in there and do some good, and he got knocked down to 0. And I'm pretty sure it was Atticus got knocked down to 0. The party's running out of resources for these kind of fights, and then the bear comes in to finish things off, and he ends up getting knocked down to 0. So of course he turns back into gnome form. Lothar takes the attack of opportunity so he can come over here and pour a potion in his mouth. So he pops up, and unlike Baldur's Gate 3, in this game, as soon as you have hit points, you're back in the fight and you can participate. And then Pietor's character rolled a nat 20 on his first death saving throw. Well, when you roll a nat 20, you pop up with 1 hit point. So he was back in the fight. These guys are viciously swinging around their scythes, trying to get anybody. They put him down, and Pietor had 1 hit point, so he went back down. When they finally had finished off the rest of these guys, right? So they finished off the rest of the red caps. These 2 guys are down. And I was like, okay, Lothar wants to. It was like almost 9 o'clock at this point. We had already gone over. It was time to finish things up. So I had everybody roll this scouting check to try to get them out of the deep haze. And right at the end of the night, Lothar rolls a nat 20 on his scouting check. So I was like, okay, that's it. That counts for all the successes, because of course he's trying to show up the party and all that kind of stuff. And I described them coming out of the deep haze, and he's carrying he was carrying Atticus under one arm and Peter under the other, or whichever 2 were down. He's carrying them out, and all these guys are like, oh, you saved us, all praise and glory to the Unrivaled 4, trying to keep building up that rivalry. Although Pietor had gone out of his way to make sure that the Dryad left one last charm on the hooded lanterns to talk about how great the Peter and the Rest, which is one of the names of our group, how great their group was and how great a job they did and all that stuff. So it's a kind of a competition for the fame and glory of this encounter. But the party made it back, or at least made it out of the deep haze, and we're going to pick up there next time. Please give us a like, please give us a subscribe, please give us some comments if you like what we're doing, and we'll catch you next week.